Okay, welcome everyone. It's our passport to professionalism, translating your experience and skills. I know we emphasize this in our outreach via email to you, but I think it could be easy for you all to feel like you're sitting at home this time in the semester, you're doing your online classes, it's tough to stay motivated. You might not feel like you're really learning or gaining that much or growing, but in fact, we want to help you understand that that is not the case. You are gaining a lot right now from this time and the adapting that you're having to do right now. So we're glad that you're here to join us. Hope that this provides you some uplifting advice, way to reframe how you are experiencing this current crisis and understand how the skills that you are gaining right now can actually someday benefit you down the line when you're pursuing various career opportunities or graduate school opportunities.
Can everyone see the PowerPoint screen? Yes, wonderful. Okay. So if you're not familiar with the Zoom instruction, as Trisha just mentioned, we ask you to mute your microphone. However, during the presentation, we do wish that you participate either by getting into the chat and typing or just raise your hand and say something. We definitely want to hear from you, hear your answer and see what you're thinking about. So just to let you know, like, you know where the mute button and the stop video. If you want to be on video, it's up to you. We'd like to see your smiling faces, or if you prefer to be blocked out, that's totally fine as well. And then the raise your hand function is going to be in the chat section.
All right, so what we're going over today, we will talk a little bit about your early return from abroad, talk about transferable skills as well, so how the skills that you've gained from your time abroad can apply in a career setting, a professional setting. We're going to talk about how you actually articulate those skills in resume format, LinkedIn, and interview format, and we'll apply that interview to specifically behavioral interviewing questions and give you a model for how to answer those questions. And we'll also touch on some platforms for sharing your personal or professional profile rather via LinkedIn going global. Okay.
Do you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say. Okay, so a quick review. Some of you joined us 2 weeks ago for our first reentry session. So, and for those of you who are new to the presentation, we just wanted to really quickly review some of the themes that we touched on the 14th, I believe it was. So what we talked about with what was the greatest challenge about this change of plan this spring semester for you. You don't necessarily need to answer, we just want you to be reflective right now. Also, as you're going through this transition, what have you found effective in helping managing stress, and also what makes you feel happy right now? It's important to take time every day to take care of yourself, so these are good things to think about. And also, most importantly, and this is a good segue into this presentation, is how have you grown from this experience? And I would also like to take a moment to introduce Andrew Mobbs from NAU Career. Hi, Andrew. From NAU Career Development. Andrew will be leading most of this presentation. Andrew, thanks so much to be with us today. We really appreciate you.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
All right, from here on, we're letting Andrew take the stage.
So good afternoon, everyone. If you can't hear me, let me know. I'm also sorry to subject you to my face. Let me know if you want me to go off video as well. So I'm a program coordinator at Career Development. I've happily crossed paths with some of you already. And also notably, way back when as an undergraduate, between my sophomore and junior years, I also studied abroad through a faculty-led program. My time was minimal, honestly. The entire program was about just shy of 3 weeks, 18 or 19 days. But I assure you, despite that short length of time, in terms of the intrinsic value that it gave me and instrumentally, like how it helped me with my career trajectory, I got a lot of mileage, or kilometerage, I suppose, off of the experience. So I commend you for undertaking education abroad. It's awesome. It's transformative. And I'm not alone in commending you. So a couple of starting statistics here. You know, Erasmus, they do a lot of reporting specifically with higher education populations. And one notable figure is that 92% of employers prefer transferable skills that you gain from education abroad experiences, namely because within one education abroad experience, you can encapsulate every single crucial skill that hiring managers are looking for, which is why we hope to clarify this for you so you can articulate it when you're pursuing opportunities later. Specifically, 64% of them value any kind of international experience. This goes beyond education abroad. This could be doing volunteer work in other countries. This could be doing research or internships, or simply traveling and bolstering your linguistic and cross-cultural competence. It's something that cannot be overstated in terms of its importance. When it comes to the numbers, when the job offer is made and salary negotiation comes, almost half, 41% of employers, according to the Employability and Study Abroad survey by Hostelworld, which they do every year, 41% are more likely to up the salary for hires who studied abroad despite the length of time. So certainly make sure that this is on your resume, your cover letter, your application materials. And to give you some perspective, one specific hiring manager, a man named Max Dubroff, he's the HR consultant for a company called Einfluss, which is a startup in 2016. They're sort of a recruiting firm. And to quote him, he said, I've hired other candidates who aren't as qualified as other candidates simply because they knew another language. Language is the study of interactions. If you value language, you are also more likely to value other people. So just taking the initiative to undertake this experience and bolster your linguistic skills, your cross-cultural skills, because they go together. Trust me, hiring managers take note of that. And especially when you're competing with other applicants throughout the entire time, the education abroad experience could be the thing that puts you over the edge in terms of getting the offer. So we have here a short video clip that we're going to play for you that's about 2.5 minutes long, and it's from University of Colorado Boulder students who recently studied abroad. We're just going to view what they said about their experiences, and we're curious to see if you can relate at all to what they're saying. And again, in the reflective nature of this workshop, as Melanie said, also start thinking about how this experience that you had through education abroad will further your career and dreams.
All right, I'm just making sure I'm sharing the clip here. Are you still seeing the PowerPoint? Or are you seeing YouTube?
I see the PowerPoint at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. Let me pull this. I'm going to pull this over to the new window then.
As we're loading up the video, if everyone could go in the chat box and write your NAU login ID, you know, like the letters and the numbers. For example, mine is MC286. So if you can go, it's for NAU Career Development. They keep track of students participating in their webinar. So thank you so much.
Thank you in advance. Thank you, Melanie.
All right, let's see if. Are you seeing the YouTube now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna press play.
Having an international experience is really important these days because it's such a global workplace.
It is basically the primary reason I got a job right out of college.
It is something that sets you apart truly from other people.
Study abroad is basically a huge part of why I got the job that I have right now after graduation.
Students who have a broader undergrad experience are more likely to get attention with their resume and get jobs.
My experience in Germany obviously allowed me to improve my language skills.
The skills that you obtain by being there, the way that you're able to critically think and look at things in different ways.
They liked that I had international experience, that I spoke Spanish, that I was used to working independently, I was used to adapting to really different situations, being out of my comfort zone.
If one studies abroad where there's a service learning or internship component, that can be really impressive for an employer to see that.
I met somebody at a CU job fair.
I think we lost audio, Trisha. I don't know if you can hear it. Anyone?
No, it's same thing for,
Oh, darn.
it seems to be, yeah, I don't know what happened.
Here, I'll
Did you mute
scrub
us?
back here.
Yeah, you can't mute
Tell me
yourself.
where.
You can't mute yourself anymore.
I didn't know. I let someone into the waiting room and I didn't know if that was a disturbance, so I thought I'd mute myself. Thanks for letting me know.
Right there, it's good.
Perfect.
This going, and they really
Thanks,
wanted
everyone.
the speakers to come on, and started right after graduation.
Problem solving is a huge thing. It's a big thing that employers look for. Your skills to be able to do that, your communication skills, interpersonal communication skills.
It was actually the first question in my interview. They were looking at my resume and they said, "So, Nicaragua, how was that? Tell us about it. What did you learn? What did you like?"
I remember a student telling me that's all the employer wanted to talk about. So it can also be a conversation piece on your resume in addition to all these skills you've gained.
Just the ability to speak German while as an American inside of Germany gives you a leg up that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Having a second language can really help somebody stand apart in terms of the job search process, especially if they're looking for an international career. Those skills in themselves are incredibly marketable when you're looking at the job market.
It's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you more employable.
Absolutely, I recommend it.
I've never heard somebody come back and say it was not a good experience. It was not an amazing experience. It's going to benefit your children, your families, your relatives, your communities.
I think that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for people that are different, that have skills that set you apart, that make you strong and make you willing to work independently. And I think study abroad prepares you for that.
Well, good thing you caught me there because that music is very inspiring. All right, switch back to the presentation here.
Also, if you can have your cell phone nearby, there will be a sample EV in a couple minutes. So if you want to participate, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Melanie, do you want to talk about this one?
That's actually Andrew's, but I'm more than happy to actually talk about the early readup. What do you feel like, Andrew?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I could go through the slide and open it up to anyone. You're welcome to jump in at any time. So regarding the video that you just witnessed, hopefully you were able to draw some positive parallels. It's clear that you know, the education abroad experience that these students had was dual-fold. It was intrinsically meaningful just for the sake of undertaking the experience, which is important, but it was also extrinsically meaningful. They were talking about how, you know, it was very significant in advancing their job and internship prospects. Certainly, you don't see education abroad on a resume every day, so a lot of hiring managers will be enamored with it and sort of steer the ship to converse about that, which is a really good thing. So when it comes to returning early, I think, you know, we can sort of liken this to the stages of grief. I imagine that you're feeling a plethora of emotions right now, and they're all justified, from just disbelief, disappointment, sadness, concern. You know, I'm here to completely validate those. And it's something that you should have the right to feel. Despite that, though, the theme of this workshop is channeling this into positive productivity and focusing on how, regardless of the amount of time, it's ultimately going to help you and be in your best interest. So the 5 stages of grief, perhaps you're somewhere within these stages. Denial, obviously, disbelief at having to return early under the circumstances, as anyone would feel. Anger, completely justified. How could this pandemic mess up my academic plans? If anything, I would like to think that being angry or upset was an indication that you are succeeding abroad, that you are having a meaningful experience. So please don't lose sight of that. Bargaining, sort of the negotiation. Okay, I came back early. What if I can go back, you know, by June if things clear up? When can I return? You know, sort of deliberating that within yourself. Again, if you're in that stage, just hopefully maintain that motivation to go abroad as soon as it's possible and feasible for you. This is definitely not a one and done experience. Depression, sadness. I'm sad that my experience was cut short. Certainly, especially if you made some meaningful contacts, not only among the host country nationals, but also among your friends. When you know, if you in a group of your American cohort are in the same circumstances or similar circumstances abroad, even if you weren't that close in the United States, these circumstances will bring you together very, very quickly, which is a good thing. So again, try to accentuate the silver lining based on your experience that is channeling these feelings. And then ultimately, acceptance. Okay, even though it's not going to look like I'm going to be studying abroad for spring 2020, what can I do going forward? How can I pool my resources? How can I collaborate with NAU professionals to get my, you know, academic progress at a place where I can partake in education abroad as soon as possible? Semester, faculty, long program, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have anything to add, Melanie? Okay.
No, that was perfect. We can move on.
So similarly, this is not something that we're going to read now. At the end of the presentation, we have about 4 or 5 meaningful links. And I think Melanie is going to intermittently drop them in the chat box. But Keisha Solomon, awesome. She's an Atlanta-based writer, and she considers herself a serial traveler. She's been abroad many times. And she likened returning home to the United States the first time as sort of a breakup. And it was an interesting analogy, but again, it reaffirms the fact that she took a lot of meaning out of the experience, and it motivated her to return to go overseas again and again. So just one quick quote from her blog before we move on. She said, "At the start, it was all too raw and tender," returning, that is. And in the end, each expat experience, however, is an extra patch on your personal quilt, a new swirl in your uniquely patterned self. You have been irreversibly changed by it, and you will carry it with you always. Certainly the irreversible change and carrying the experience with you always, as someone who went abroad for the first time, you know, 13, 14 years ago, that rings true. And every time I have since returned, it just, I guess, makes the uniquely patterned swirl in my quilts even more indelible. So she has a very awesome perspective regarding returning, and I highly recommend checking out her blog whenever you have time later. So At this time, I think Melanie is going to initiate the poll.
We have a couple questions, so if you want to grab your cell phone and type in pollev.com/MelanieCaron580, we'll give you a couple seconds to do that. And in about 30 seconds, Tricia, we can move on to the first slide. Okay, let's move on. All right, so we're just curious, as we're going to be digging a little bit deeper in terms of your experience abroad. We just would like to know if you do have plans to go abroad in the future, and if so, what are they? So if you could please answer, that would be awesome. Okay, so we have ours. All right, so we have students that are thinking about education abroad, internship, personal travel. I think we all can relate. We all want to go travel somewhere. Volunteering, awesome.
No one says no so far.
So this is good. Yes. Yeah.
I saw. I didn't want to.
We love to
want
see that.
into existence just in case.
Right. This is great. I love to see internship and volunteering. That's awesome.
Totally.
Okay, so I think we have everyone. We can move to the next one. Thanks for sharing. And please come and meet with us. We can make it happen. We will make it happen.
We can even advise you a little bit on personal travel. We believe in the power of that too.
I think the entire team has quite an expertise to share. Okay, and so from your experience, we would like to know, what did you value the most from your experience abroad?
And for those that didn't get to go abroad, make sure, just put something that, I don't know, Mel, what do you think? Because you also have an experience to talk about when you're talking to employers moving forward about not being able to go. So
awesome, great.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, you know, the students that have not had the chance to go abroad this semester, obviously you've put a lot of time in planning and everything. This is something that's valuable as well. So we'd be curious to hear what your experience from your
you anticipate being the most meaningful takeaways for sure when you do eventually go abroad.
Okay, yeah.
I cannot resonate with patience. I cannot resonate with that enough. That would definitely be in my top two.
I like that. Somebody wrote patience.
I did not realize how impatient I was until I functioned abroad.
Problem-solving skills. Those are great responses. Thanks for sharing.
A lot of relationships, everyone. A lot of network building, seeing new places just the everyday experiences.
Cultural differences.
Self-confidence. Oh man, fewer experiences are more empowering than realizing that you're able to make a go of it in a completely different world. It's awesome.
Okay. Thanks everyone. This is great. And it will come to play.
So one thing that we've mentioned, the notion of transferable skills. We're not going to show this video now, but it's really brief. It's like 1.5 minutes long, and it will be in the links. It comes from Michael Page, which is a recruiting firm that does a lot of recruiting on LinkedIn. And the takeaway here is, as I mentioned earlier, one education abroad experience is pretty much a meaningful catch-all for the exact top transferable skills that employers want. And when I say that, I take it from data. So, I look at the National Association of Colleges and Employers, where they rank every single year upon talking to hiring managers, CEOs, COOs across all industries, across all sectors. And things like that you heard from the Colorado University students, some of the skills that you just articulated in the last poll: flexibility, adaptability, the ability to build meaningful interpersonal relationships, teamwork, leadership, problem solving. All of these and more are extremely crucial in addition to your technical skills. So transferable skills, these are the skills that you get from one context and you can apply them in any single context. So for example, teamwork. If I successfully collaborate with my team in a class project and we get a good grade and take it forward, that's one thing. I'm also on a volunteer trash pickup crew, and my team and I work really well together to coordinate the meetings and the safety briefings. So that's successful teamwork in a volunteer experience, along with paid work experiences, research, education abroad, et cetera, et cetera. 4 of the primary skills mentioned in the video that I referenced in the last slide are taking initiative, leadership, teamwork, and communication. Unwaveringly, every single year, these are ranked in the top 10 transferable skills. I wager that for those of you who have been perusing job and internship opportunities, looking at the description, I don't care if it's a page long, I don't care if it's a paragraph long, they're going to be chock full of these exact skills. So for example, start thinking about how consciously you have already enacted and developed some of these for your education abroad experiences. Number 1, taking initiative. Education abroad is a wonderful opportunity, but guess what? It's not mandatory. You elected to do this on your own for personal growth, for experiential development, whether your motivations were more personal or professional. Just by undertaking education abroad shows immense initiative. So congrats on doing that. Leadership. Leadership is wonderfully broad. You've probably acted as a leader in some capacity without even realizing it. So for example, you know, yours truly is absolutely worthless when it comes to directions and navigating. You know, I had to rely when I was studying abroad in Italy way back when. One of my friends was really good at it, so I sort of deferred to him to lead us through the wonderful main streets and back alleys of Florence, right? So if you've done anything like leading your group around a new city or acting as the language advocate, so, you know, for example, if you want to communicate with a host country national and you communicate on behalf of, you know, the group of friends that you're with, in this way you've acted as a leader. Teamwork, collaboration in all contexts. So maybe you've collaborated for your class assignments on a project, either in person or online. Maybe you've collaborated with some of your friends on planning the daily itinerary to check out the museums, the local supermarket, anything like that. Teamwork is really broad in any paid and unpaid capacity. Communication, arguably the crux of education abroad experience, right? So obviously your foreign language skills, not only developing, you know, bilingualism or multilingualism, but being bicultural as well, and being able to creatively navigate language barriers. In linguistics, we call it circumlocution, right? Let's say that you want to convey an idea to someone in German, but you don't exactly know the right vocabulary word. And if you do, because it's German, it's probably 29 characters long, you know. So instead of saying that word, thinking of another way to convey what you want to say, like using more words to describe something until the native German speaker gets it. This is creativity, this is problem solving, this is effective communication, all in one. So start thinking about the individual transferable skills and exactly how each of them were spotlit in your experiences, for sure.
Okay, so we have another little poll from you. If you can grab your cell phone. So we would like you to think of a transferable skill that you've gained from this experience. And we left this experience because it doesn't necessarily mean that you had to go abroad. Maybe you did, maybe you're not, but I'm sure that you've gained skills from that. So take a moment to think about that and please share your response. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I think
time management, yeah, absolutely. Good.
I feel like few experiences help you understand differences in personality than traveling with someone. That's really
Differences in personality, that could go under interpersonal skills, and also one of the most underrated skills in my humble opinion, which is emotional intelligence. And kudos for optimism as well. Clear, effective managing. Yeah, multitasking, that implies managing multiple relations. You have to have excellent organization skills, for sure.
Time management is a great one, since a lot of you have switched to online learning now. You definitely have you don't have the same structure as showing up in person for classes. So that's definitely a skill that I think most people can relate to right now.
Especially when you're, yeah, and I don't, for those of you who had to contend with different time zones for education abroad, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Planning and organizing. Some of you had to pack up your lives in a matter of a few days, so that takes some extreme organizational skills.
I probably would have been better off traveling with all of you based on your responses, because I enjoy one thing I'm not good at, ironically, being abroad is planning. So I could really benefit from so those of you who have the leadership, exactly as Michaela said, right as I said it. Yeah, totally.
All right.
Okay, thank you for your responses. So when it comes to anticipating your time abroad for when you go for the first time or you return, or reflecting on your time abroad for those of you who recently returned, 4 main steps. Number 1 is be able to clearly identify your international experience. Specifically, what are some of the things that you did or will do? This could be long-term or short-term, stints abroad. Did you specifically undertake an internship? Did you volunteer? Did you travel? Did you approach it from an academic standpoint? Be able to clarify that for hiring managers, because studying abroad is a very broad term. So helping them fill in the context gaps for exactly how you were functioning over there. Secondly, reflecting, taking a step back now that we can process it. What was the purposes that you were seeking, that you will seek to fulfill? What are your goals essentially? What are the challenging situations? I promise you, at least once in an interview, something about a challenging situation to overcome is going to come up. If you are able to recall an experience from your time via EA for this, it's going to probably impress them all the more. Exciting moments as well. It's really crucial to reflect in what were the big takeaways, aha moments, unexpected teachable moments that you learned. Not just from the experience, but about yourself. I really didn't realize, for example, that I was comfortable with ambiguity and not knowing every single move until I was in a foreign country for the first time. And I'm like, wow, okay, I can sort of adapt more when I return to the United States as well and still be okay. So documenting your international experience specifically, this is where we get down to brass tacks for when you're pursuing opportunities in your resume, in your cover letter, your LinkedIn. So these are things obviously that our office are more than happy to help you with, but this is such a meaningful experience. If you don't articulate it in your application materials or online, you're honestly doing yourself a disservice. So make sure that you are. And finally, once you inevitably make it to the interview, because of your awesome EA experience, be able to confidently verbalize it and discuss it. So, I find some of you are probably the first individual in your family or your friend network to have gone abroad, which is really awesome. I was the first one for mine. And it's hard because when you come back, some people will ask you questions about it and you try to explain it, but there's just a knowledge gap. So try to preempt this, especially when you're talking to the hiring committee in the interview. How can you help them understand how much you developed personally in terms of those transferable skills that we just talked, and even beyond the interview in like a career.
I did it.
Good. Well, now you can use Zoom for good.
So even beyond that, like if you're going to a career expo or a networking event, your elevator pitch, when you just essentially introduce yourself, your elevator pitch, it should include, I think, at least 1 or 2 instrumental practical experiences that you've done. And I would wager that education abroad is among them. So being prepared to discuss them. We'll get to it, Joe. Don't worry. So I'm a man of my word, see? Conveying your reflections in your resume. Oh, did you have something to say, Melanie?
I just wanted to say this is great. Thanks for asking a question, Joe. If you have, this is for all the participants, if you have any question, please either raise your hand or use the chat box and we will relay your question for Andrew.
So to answer about the best place to indicate it in your resume, you have a lot of, you have carte blanche to decide that. So personally, what I do in my own resume and CV, I literally have a separate section entitled International Experience. And within International Experience, at the very bottom, because reverse chronological order, I have my faculty-led education abroad program. But since then, I've done other things abroad as well. My Peace Corps stint, my time teaching with the Department of State, I beautifully encapsulated it in its own section. Yes, international experience is just one way to term it. Again, if you want to call it educational travel, or you could even call it like education abroad experience, however you want to term it. But, you know, from a visibility standpoint, I'm a fan. Some people will just take one, they'll have one broadly titled section, for example, experience in their resume. And within that, they'll put a range of paid and unpaid experiences. And while you can do that, you got to keep in mind that most hiring managers are going to give you about 10 seconds of their time while looking at the resume. So from a physiological, like visibility standpoint, the more different sections that you have that celebrate the variety of your paid and unpaid experiences, the more advantageous it is, especially because another thing that the National Association of Colleges and Employers tells us is that in addition to transferable skills, they now more than ever value people who have undertaken many different kinds of experiences, paid or unpaid, education abroad, volunteer, internships, undergraduate research, job shadowing, even if it's only for like one time, right? This and more is going to help you. So there are many different places that you can indicate it in your resume. You can indicate it twice as well. We recommend you start with a summary of qualifications. You could have a bullet point that summarizes your education abroad experience, and then you could refer to it more specifically in another section in the resume. So you have a lot of options of how to do this. The main thing is talking about what we call accomplishment statements, and those are the bullet points that describe the different experiences within your resume. So when it comes to writing accomplishment statements, there are 3 crucial guidelines that are listed right here. Number 1, start with an action verb. Number 2, quantify and specify your accomplishments whenever possible. And number 3, end by mentioning the outcome or the impact or the result of what you did, not just the task itself. So beginning with a strong action verb, one thing I recommend here, if you are applying for an opportunity and you actually have the job or internship description, this is basically a cheat sheet, right? They usually have a section that says primary responsibilities include. So how do they articulate that? Through verbs. The ideal candidate will coordinate, blah, 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 schedule, blah, 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 manage, blah, 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 blah. So if any of that verbiage summarizes what you did through your education abroad experiences or other experiences, then feel free to use that same word. Yes, thank you for the verbs, Holly. And to be clear, I'm not saying that you should copy and paste gratuitous chunks of text from the job description to your resume. Number 2, quantifying and specifying is important, and here's why. You are the expert of your experiences. You have all the knowledge. The hiring manager has minimal. Basically, you want to make them feel psychologically more comfortable with you by giving them concrete information so they can better understand how you were thriving and functioning. What skills were you using? You know, things like that. So in the case that we have here, we go from developed and practiced. Instead of just saying developed and practiced language skills, we can quantify and specify developed and practiced French language skills for 20 hours weekly in classroom in social settings. See, if you had no context whatsoever and someone told you that, the goal is to like mentally envision you doing that. And that's what you want for the hiring manager. Thirdly, focusing on the accomplishment outcome itself. This is really a current trend in resumes. I don't want to know just what you did, what became of it, right? So, for example, developed and practiced French language skills for 20 hours weekly in a classroom in social settings, attaining advanced level comprehension conversation rating in 1 semester. Your result does not have to be quantifiable. It can be anecdotal. Just let us know basically how you knocked it out of the park, right? So more on this for the next slide. Here are some before and after examples. Instead of merely saying, for example, visited museums in China, I can kind of see what you mean by that, but give me some more information. Like, what was the purpose of it? What did you take away? So again, applying the 3 guidelines to writing effective accomplishment statements, beginning with an action verb, quantifying and specifying when possible, and then finally mentioning the outcome or impact. We might say instead, oh, I toured 5 museums in Beijing, gaining an appreciation, Chinese culture, let's see, through painting techniques to influence personal artwork, right? Instead of just simply saying that you tutored English or did English language tutoring, you might say you planned detailed lessons, tutored 11 German elementary school students, helping them improve their language fluency and cross-cultural skills. In this way, thinking back to those transferable skills, plan detailed lessons, okay, you have the capacity for attention to detail. That's good. You were able to successfully work with, Deutschkinder, right? The German elementary school students. So that shows effective interpersonal skills. Again, really intentionally spotlighting some of these transferable skills in your accomplishment statements, namely those that they want in the job description. Gave a poster presentation. So if any of you are doing research or any kind, you have the opportunity to do this at, the undergraduate symposium or other, conferences. So instead of just saying that you presented a poster, tell me more, right? Presented well-organized poster on social media use among Spanish teens at NAU undergraduate symposium, effectively communicating quantitative research with peer community. Your bullet points, your accomplishment statements, when you indicate them in your resume, they should be 1 line, 2 lines max. It's not the next Leo Tolstoy novel, right? But even within that succinct amount of space, you can encapsulate a lot of meaningful information if you follow those 3 guidelines. So a couple minutes for quick practice. Here are the guidelines. I want to give you all maybe like 2 minutes to come up with 1 accomplishment statement that you can say about your education abroad experience. And then at the end of the time, I would politely ask maybe 1 individual to read what they got. Or if not, reading the chat box is also an option. So I'll give you a couple minutes.
That's when we need to have some background music, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Joe can grab his guitar.
Oh, that would be great. An interlude. I've noticed that it's gone from sunny to rainy since we've started this presentation. Nice.
But the sun always shines in education abroad, so we're good.
Nice metaphor.
All right, just by a show of hands, is anyone ready to start sharing your action word? Yes.
Awesome. If you have a solid accomplishment statement ready to go and are willing to read it to us, that would be awesome. So for example, like recalling my time when I did the faculty-led study abroad program in Italy, I might say initiated conversations with 5 Italian citizens daily, gaining their appreciation while bolstering my Italian speaking fluency. Something like that.
I like that example. Not anything formalized, just something that you took initiative to do.
Grazie.
Prego.
I can share one. When I was a teacher in India, I developed my own lesson plans and implemented new learning techniques in the classroom for 55 sixth grade English language students.
See, what, like, developing your own lesson plans and implementing in the classroom is effective, but like 55, that is a very formidable number. That just makes it all the more of a powerful statement. You know what I mean?
It was a lot.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. All right. Any of you would like to share an accomplishment statement that you have? Okay, well, if you don't vocalize, we'll allow for the chat box as well.
And I'd like to say, I know sometimes people are a little bit shy. I can definitely relate. Please know that the NAU career development team is there to support you too as you're working towards your resume or kind of articulating. So don't hesitate to make an appointment with them to work on those practices that you need to do.
Totally. All right, I see one from, let's see.
Oh, great, we have somebody.
Yay, people are sharing.
Oh, they.
Oh, cool, outdoor camp.
See, now that you're thinking about it, previously you may have just said like taught students, you know, but it's so much more meaningful when you're able to quantify and specify and focus on, you know, the positive results that you garnered. Excellent.
Those
Okay.
are great. Those are great examples. Yeah.
Exactly what we were hoping for. All right.
Okay, should we move along?
Sure. So
Thank
now
you.
that we've talked about articulating accomplishment statements, I think behavioral interviewing. So the name behavioral interviewing derives from behavioral psychology. Again, behavioral interview questions are when hiring managers ask for specific examples about your past behaviors when you navigated different situations and experiences. Some people call these scenario questions. They usually start with language gambits along the lines of, give me an example of a time when you did this. Tell me about a time when, you know, describe a situation when. If you are asked one of these questions, it's a behavioral interview question. So hiring managers like these, again, to capture more of the context. They weren't abroad with you, right? So being able to successfully recall an experience, you're essentially telling a story, right? An interview should be a conversation, not an interrogation. So they're asking you for, again, your past behaviors so they can have an idea of how you would operate and handle a similar situation that arose within their organization. So if you're able to convince them, you know, through a detailed structured response that you navigated the experience successfully, they're going to be confident that you can navigate a similar experience within their situation, their organization as well. So when it comes to behavioral interview questions, here are some common ones. I've personally been asked at least 3 of these. So for example, tell me about a time when you had to work on something with someone from a different background. What steps did you take to complete the task? Or discuss a time you faced a stressful situation out of your comfort zone. What did you do to overcome the challenges confronting you? Since problem solving is the top rated transferable skill now, they'll probably ask you something along those lines. So for example, discuss a time when you had to solve a problem that unexpectedly arose. Some interviewers may focus some of the questions on specific experiences. So if you are open about your education abroad experience, they may say, okay, well, describe a major lesson that you learned abroad and how you'll apply it here. All of these and more are possible behavioral interview questions that you may encounter. So when it comes to the structured response to approach these, we recommend what is called the STAR method. It's an acronym for situation, task, action, result. Situation is where you describe the settings of your story, the who, what, when, where, why, what was going on, what were you doing. The task is the goal that you were trying to accomplish, the objective that you were trying to fulfill. Sometimes it's sort of implied, but make sure that they know what, within the context of your story, what your end game was. That's the task. Your action, this should be about 70% of your response, because this is where you're really fortifying your response with details. Literally, you know, first I blah, blah, blah. After that, I blah, blah, blah. When I saw that, I blah, blah, blah. Then I blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, I yada, yada, yada. Use first person language. Make sure you use the pronoun I, not because you're conceited, but because we want to know specifically what you did, what role you contributed, right? The interview is a time to be professionally modest. As long as you don't have an arrogant tone, I'm not going to think you're arrogant. Which brings us to the result. Human beings, we generally prefer closure over cliffhangers, right? So share the outcomes of your actions. What impact did you make? What lesson did you learn? The hard part is hitting all four of these, the S, the T, and the A, and the R. But with practice, you can do it. And if you craft a response that touches on all of them, it's going to be sufficient. A lot of organizations use this behavioral interview method. Off the top of my head, Amazon is one of the top to do it. Let's give you some examples. So if, again, when it comes to behavioral interview questions, and the situation can apply to any life experience. It could be a paid work experience, volunteer, internship. Certainly, I hope that you utilize some of your educational abroad experiences for this. So in this case, if a behavioral interview question came up about problem solving, right? Here is an example that we have, and we've broken it down into all four parts. So when I first got to Korea, I knew one word. At first, the whole experience was overwhelming. I had a lot of difficulty communicating with the locals. Perhaps some of you can relate, right? T, the task. Instead of getting discouraged, I challenged myself to learn the language. There is your goal, to become more proficient in Korean. The action, as you could see, again, is the most in-depth. As part of my course, I took a language class, but I knew it wasn't enough. So I contacted Korean students at the university to see if they'd be interested in a language exchange. We practiced together weekly, and soon I broke out of my shell and made new Korean friends who helped me with my language skills. So the R, the result, as a result, consequently, by the end of the term, I was amazed at how much I'd learned. I went from knowing one word to ordering in Korean from my group of friends at a restaurant. And this result, it has no numbers in it. Again, it does not have to be quantifiable, but it's clear that they were able to convey that their actions paid off, and they were all able to solve the problem about their Korean language difficulties. So Tricia has done a wonderful job of crafting perhaps an example through STAR based on the current situation. So again, one of the questions was, talk about a time where you had to solve a problem that arose unexpectedly, right? Or even if they asked you about being confronted with a challenging situation, this is applicable. So during the outbreak, I packed up my life in 48 hours and navigated a series of complicated bookings to get back to the US. Upon returning, I needed to adapt to taking courses online, which I had never done before. Some of my classes even took place in the middle of the night due to the time difference. I knew I needed to impose structure on myself to succeed. So there's the task. Exactly what did you do to impose structure? Give me all of the details. Okay, I created an hourly schedule. I mapped out a priority of tasks for the day. I sought out assistance through the Academic Success Center. I organized a weekly Zoom call with my friends from abroad, so we could still collaborate on class projects. Again, this information to you may seem mundane, but it's exactly what the hiring manager wants to know. You have to supply them with details. The more you're able to convey how you would operate in this situation, the more real it's going to be for them when they're contextualizing as you on their team. Result, implementing structure for myself pushed me to stay motivated and on track with coursework. Utilizing campus resources helped me set my goals, manage my time, successfully complete my coursework, and continuing to connect with study abroad friends ensured that I felt part of the global community. And even though the crux of this question may have been about problem solving, still within the ST, the A, and the R, you're able to convey a lot of other transferable skills that you use, pepper them in there strategically. So we do want you to maintain contact with any international or American connections whom you made abroad, but also LinkedIn is just absolutely crucial, not only for online professional branding, but networking, above and beyond through the NAU Alumni Network, through people who are employed with organizations or groups in which you're interested. So LinkedIn is one of the many things that career development can help you with if you have any questions. But the suggestions we have are, again, developing your international network, participate in discussions, commenting on their work. The more you do this, the more LinkedIn is going to recognize you as active. The more active you are, the greater the chance you have being recognized by recruiters who literally 40 hours a week scour LinkedIn to find qualified candidates to fill the roles in their organizations. If you're searching for an international position specifically, indicate that in the headline. Your headline, you have a lot of characters. So Tamika is assessment administrator. She is gainfully employed. So she updated her headline to reflect her current position. But if you're searching for any opportunities, be super intentional and concrete in the headline. And if you need more examples about that, again, happy to help you. Specify, again, any career interest and location preferences. You can do this in editing your profile. The more customized your career interest and location preferences, you can sign up for job alerts. Some recruiters will know, things like that. And to keep it local for some down-to-home networking, NAU International Lumberjacks, search for them on LinkedIn, and NAU Career Development as well. Another resource is Going Global, which is awesome. You access it from the CIE homepage. If you click on the About drop down, you will see Going Global, and you can log in through your NAU credentials. It gives you opportunities if you want to pursue any kind of work, internship, or travel in another country. It gives by the country and sometimes by the global city, like cultural knowledge about, how to behave in, the work or professional setting there. Just a treasure trove of awesome resources. I've used this in my career advising appointments many times since Dr. Dylan Rust showed it to me. So you access it through the CIE website. Graduate school. Some of you may be considering graduate school. And this is my personal testimony. Again, my experience, studying abroad, and then after that studying abroad. So first of all, I studied abroad when I was, between sophomore and junior year. My study abroad experience was largely instrumental in me getting accepted to be, a Peace Corps volunteer. That demonstrated that I had the ability to basically hang tough and cross-culturally thrive, in a different country. And then, after the Peace Corps, that is what was responsible for me being a marketable graduate school candidate. And that ultimately got me a graduate teaching assistantship, which means bluntly that I saved $40,000 in 2 years. So something, in my studying abroad experience was 3 weeks. That's pretty good payoff, right? I was happy to do it regardless, but my career trajectory, I was able to really spotlight that in my, the job search process, and it worked out well. So same thing for graduate school, the admissions committee instead of the hiring committee, but it's pretty much the same concept. be able to reflect on your study abroad experiences, specifically the transferable skills you gained, and how you could apply them to your program of choice, especially if they give you like application criteria, certainly. So thank you kindly for your attention. Again, career development, even though our office is temporarily closed, we're still accepting appointments online through Zoom, resume reviews, cover letters, job internship searching, mock interview practice. We can help give you LinkedIn tutorials, anything that you need. And the links, I think Melanie also dropped as well.
Yes, the links were dropped throughout the entire presentation. So we will be sharing this presentation with you, so you'll have the active.
Totally.
Yeah. Are there any questions for Andrew?
You can also keep asking in the chat box, or obviously reach out to Andrew, any of us following the webinar today, and we'll get back to you. Definitely take advantage of career development, career services. Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. There's no limit to the number of appointments that you can make with us. We're very available now. Just go sign up and handshake, follow-up appointments as well. If you have a specific opportunity that you plan on applying for, then if you have that description and you send that, then we can help you make sure that your application materials are customized as well, and making sure that you're properly reflecting your education abroad experience throughout every step of the way as well.
Can you see Amanda's flyer? Excellent. So we'll also take this opportunity to plug another webinar, if you're not webinared out, this evening starting at 6 p.m. Arizona time. It is with Andrea Graves, and the webinar will be covering skills for applying for international and national scholarships. And I think, well, from what I understand of the webinar, it would prepare students for opportunities like Peace Corps, Fulbright, other competitive opportunities to receive funding for fellowships or otherwise. So this could be a way to really continue on with your trajectory into an international career. So I'll scroll down here so you can see it. 6 p.m. Arizona time today, and there's the link. We can make sure, I'm sure SA 301 has that. Oh, perfect. Thank you for plugging that in. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And for everyone, we really invite you to join us on Instagram at NAU Abroad if you want to keep in touch with our office on social media. Thank you, Tricia. On social media, and we're also available at studyabroad@nau.edu by email if you have any question or if you want to reach out to your advisor.
Totally. And absolutely. And even if like not the appointment types, if you want an informational interview about any aspect of going abroad or like different opportunities, then I'm happy to do that as well. But thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.